And now we have a panel discussion on National Education Policy 2020, making it more learner-centric. In fact, as we all realize that there has been an emphasis on making education more learner-centric. So we have some amazing panelists here who would be sharing some light. We have Mr. Brijesh Karya, COO, Singhania Education Group, who's the moderator for the session. Mr. Brijesh Karya. Then we have Dr. Amrita Vohra, Director Education, GEMS India, and Executive Principal, GEMS International School, Gurgaon. Mr. Anirudh Gupta, CEO, DCM Group of Schools. Ms. Rikirat Serai, Managing Director, Satluj Group of Schools. Roshan Gandhi, Chief Executive Officer, City Montessori Schools, Lucknow. Geetika Bahuguna, Chief Operating Officer, Services, Millennium Schools. I would request all our speakers to please come on the dais. I would introduce them once again. Mr. Brijesh Karya, COO, Singhania Group, Education Group. He's the moderator for the panel. Dr. Amrita Vohra, Director Education, GEMS India, and Executive Principal, GEMS International School, Gurgaon. Mr. Anirudh Gupta, CEO, DCM Group of Schools. Rikirat Serai, Managing Director, Satluj Group of Schools. Roshan Gandhi, Chief Executive Officer, City Montessori Schools, Lucknow. Geetika Bahuguna, Chief Operating Officer, Services, Millennium Schools. Can our speakers be on the dais now? And over to Mr. Karya now. He'll be moderating the session for you all.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, so we have a very, very, very calm and quiet classroom today. Yeah, so let me try that one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. Fantastic. It feels so good to meet everyone in person. You know, it's something that we've been longing for the last 2 years. So I think before we start this conference, I think the whole education fraternity deserves a huge round of applause for the efforts that they have put in. It's been tremendous, I must say that, right? And believe me, if there is ever a word called as galaxy, I have that on the stage right now. A galaxy of superstars of education, some fantastic leaders in education. They have set their benchmarks in the last decades of education. They have spent some beautiful examples to emulate for others. And I'm sure today is going to be a great learning experience for all of us. So welcome each and everyone sitting on the stage. Thank you for taking out time. I thank Team ELITS, Dr. Ravi Gupta, Mr. Abhishek Tomar for making this happen. Thank you so much. Right? Okay, coming to the topic, the word NEP, I'm sure each and everyone has heard of it, you know, researched it, and eventually got bored of it at the end of the day. Am I right? It's done and dusted. So I'm sure the panelists today will bring about a very, very unique perspective on that. So it's going to be a very simple session. I would like to start with opening remarks, something unique about the NEP, and then one question each, right? So NEP is something, of course, fantastic document, great vision, but India is such a diverse country. Different geographies, different socioeconomic backgrounds, so execution is always going to be a challenge. So how we as educationists go about making sure that it is implemented well and eventually the child benefits out of it, the learner-centric approach, right? So opening remarks, Rikrit, I would love to start with you. How do you see the NEP? What is something unique that you have seen in the NEP? If you could throw some light on numbers, what you have seen, it'll be great to hear. Rikrit, over to you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be back on stage at WS after 2 years, after a small gap, of course, and plus it's been a very, very hard time for all of us. So shifting back to offline days from online days is a challenge as well, I feel now. But I'm happy to be back over here, of course. We've spoken about the NEP many, many times in the past. I think that there've been a lot of VCs about this as well. We've combed through each page. I think that you all have heard the major points about the NEP in the news as well. What really stands out from my point of view in terms of school managements is that the NEP is it aims to increase the gross enrollment ratio in education in terms of K-12 to 100% within the next 5 years. And in terms of higher education, it aims to achieve a gross enrollment ratio of 50% within the next 15 years from 26.3% as of now. So it's a massive task at hand. And it also aims to bring around 20 million students back into the K-12 educational system, which roughly translates to the fact that India needs to open 50 new schools and one higher education institution every week from now on till the next 15 years to, to reach these aims. It's just a massive task. So if we've got the right infra in place, if we've got the right allocation in terms of the budget as well, which is currently around 3.6 to 4%, roughly, and plus we aim to push it up to 6% also. But even a 6% budget spend on education wouldn't allow us to, to reach this aim. So I think the figures are what we have to keep in mind. And if we do somehow, reach even anywhere near these figures, I think it's going to be a massive task at hand. So that's what really stuck out. That's what really stands out in terms of the NOP as per me.
Thank you very much, Rikrit. That was fantastic. 20 million more students to be brought under the educational ambit and 50 new schools every week. Imagine the infrastructural challenge involved. Imagine the resources required to open those schools in terms of teaching, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of students. Huge challenge lies, and I'm sure as a fraternity, if the government thinks that we can come together and help our bit, I'm sure we'll all step forward and do that. Thank you so much for this wonderful, very, very unique aspect. Moving to Anirudh sir. Anirudh sir, you run one of the oldest and one of the biggest legacy schools in the country today. I'm sure you've seen education change over decade after decade after decade. How do you see education in the next 10 years because of the NEP? What are the major aspects you feel that will change in the next 10 years, sir, according to you?
Thank you, Brijesh. I think it's a wonderful document and it caters to all stakeholders. Government has its own agenda, like we were talking of GER, equity, inclusion, access, bridging the digital divide. There's a lot about teachers, skilling the teachers, the new framework for teachers training, for students, multidisciplinary approach, breaking that glass ceiling between various streams, for managements. So it's a wonderfully drafted document. However, any policy is good or bad, the way it is executed. I just hope the provisions of NEP 2020 are realized and executed in the right spirit. Dear friends, we all have to understand education is the growth engine of the economy. So it's not just about running schools, colleges, or university. We are in the process of nation building. We have to understand that, it's not just providing degrees or providing education to the children. It's, we are creating a workforce. Fine, we have to inculcate values. We have to inculcate national character. We have to make the children responsible citizens, global citizens. So there is a lot on our shoulders. I just hope that we all edu leaders, we realize that it's not just about running the schools. It's about nation building. When I used to visit US, and we all know that, we have people from all countries, subcontinents, there are not many natives there. On the contrary, in India, I think, 99% people are natives. But still, I see there's a, scarcity of national character, a vision for the country in all of us. We all just become self-centered. So we have to realize that there's a larger goal at our hands. And NEP is rightly catering to all those individual aspirations also, and the needs of the society also, and what we as a country need. And we need to realize, and we all need to get our act together. So we have a document after 34 years, and it's come at the right time. And I just hope that, all the aspects of NEP, from the early childhood care and education, the restructuring what the NEP envisages, from 10+2 to 5+3+3+4 system, whether it is skill development, it is backless days, it's vocational training, it's career counseling, there's so much. So I just hope, as one of our small stakeholders, that we all realize the provisions and the spirit behind this NAP. And yes, as a country, we have, a lot on the plateau. There requires lot of funding, lot of political will, lot of social acceptance in what, will ensure the provisions of NAP are executed in the right direction, in the right manner. So let's all try to do whatever best we can do to take India in the league of developed countries. And let's not wait and see for anybody else to take initiative or to, do something. So I'll just, end this thing with just 2 lines. माना कि इस ज़मीन को गुलजार ना कर सकें हम, कुछ कांटे तो कम हो जिधर से गुजरे हम. So if all of us make a determined effort that yes, we have to make education more purposeful, we have to ensure that the children are skilled, they are responsible children, they are global citizens, our teachers are passionate educators, they are trained enough. I think, the very purpose of NEP to take India to the center stage of global education will be achieved. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anirudh sir, at his articulating best as usual. Thank you, sir. So, sir brought out a very important point that yes, it is not one stakeholder that will bring about. It has to be a team, the fraternity, the governments, the people involved, the stakeholders. Everyone will have to come forward and play their role, right? Ma'am, just to draw out a line from what sir was speaking, how important is leadership going to be at school? Because we talk about usually the whole holistic pattern, the government has to do that, the government has to do this, why is the government not doing X, Y, Z? But as an education leader, how important is leadership going to be in the implementation of NEP from a school perspective, ma'am?
Thank you. I think we were just discussing this in the other room.
Oh, fantastic. So I seem to have read your mind.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I feel the biggest roadblock comes at the leadership level, because we've been dealing with schools and some of these recommendations are, they're the supplementary addition to what NCF had talked about. And there are islands of excellence happening all around, and if you go and study and research, you'll realize that those islands are there because the leadership is very proactive, because leadership understands what is the purpose of education, and they are the ones who are translating all the recommendation in the right spirit and making learning happen the way it ought to be. So I think leadership plays a critical role at all points of time, because there have been policies, there have been so many, campaigns which had been out earlier as well, but then they really don't, they're not able to bring about that impact because our leadership fails. So it is important, and leadership at all the levels, at the teachers' levels, at the principals' levels, at the policy level. So it is a process. So, and translating this down from the policy to the stakeholders, it is a task. And, because it's a very aspirational document, and if this happens, I think India is going to be the global leader in education. Right. Because we have the maximum number of children who can impact the world across. And, but then that would only happen if all of us are on the same plane, and all of us think alike. And that, I think, has happened because the timing of NEP when it got released, it was during a period where we've all experienced that change is the only constant.
Right.
So, a big job has been done by pandemic. That is, where people realize how technology can be made useful. Similarly, they've also realized that children, if given opportunities, can be skilled. We've been talking about skills. But then where is the opportunity in the classroom? Where is the opportunity in the school? While we would have the fantastic curriculum, but the way it gets translated in the class, it is up to the teacher's own understanding on how it needs to be done. What is skill all about? So we're talking about empowerment of students, but that doesn't happen. Right. So I think leadership plays a great role. And if we have more trainings, in fact, one of the recommendations should have been that there has to be a college of, like we have IIMs for business leaders, there have to be a college for school leaders. Because you don't have, except for in-service training, there's nobody who trains a leader, and they learn through their own experiences and challenges and, trial and errors. So all about leadership.
Perfect, brilliant. So I would like to pick up a line from, yeah, sure, sir, sure, sir.
Geeta rightly mentioned we need to have something. I think people have been asking me what's lacking in this document. I think leadership is extremely critical. And we need to have something like National Institute for School Leadership because, Brajesh, for the sake of repetition, speed of the engine is the speed of the train.
Precisely.
If we have a dynamic and visionary leaders, they'll be able to, take the education forward. So if there's something like this in our country, because most of the school leaders, they are, coming to that level with their, 10, 15, 20 years of teaching experience. So they've not been formally trained to handle various, issues and various challenges in schools. So I totally endorse your point that if we are able to set up something like this in India, it'll be wonderful.
Brilliant.
And also because leaders, they work according to their own experience. The way they have been trained, they would like to train in the similar manner. And we've seen there are so many initiatives, but there are very few leaders who actually are proactive.
Perfect.
Because they feel the children will not be able to do it. Whereas we tell them that while you expose the children, children will take it up.
Absolutely.
There's so much of enthusiasm and the zeal to learn amongst children. They are hungry. But the school leaders, whether it's teacher or the principal, they feel no, they have too much. They have to study. They have to finish the curriculum. So that's where the whole
Absolutely. So I think there's no better time to exhibit leadership in the implementation of NEP.
Yes.
Because yes, there are going to be challenges. People are going to be walking into your room, this is not feasible, this is not practical. It sounds very good on paper, but you
Yes.
can't implement it. These challenges, so I think the leaders will have to step up, make sure that there are systems in place, processes in place. Change management, I'm definitely going to talk about it in the next round of questions. So thank you so much for your
Thank you.
feedback, ma'am. So moving to Ms. Vora. Ms. Vora, you've been an alumnus of Lucknow University, Cambridge University. So you've studied in India, you've studied abroad as well. I'm sure you must have noticed a world of difference. So you think NEP bridges those gaps in any which ways? Or what could the government do in making sure that we reach up to the international level as well?
In some ways it tries to. And if I talk as an educator, I think NEP as a vision is like music to my ears, right? And I think all of us progressive educators have felt that. But what's to a great extent missing is how. It is asking a lot of why is this so, it shouldn't be so, and this is what should be, right? So it's defining that, and yes, we know that, and I think most school educators, whether they have got good leadership training or they don't, which I agree is required, but they absolutely believe in it. But what they're all struggling with is how. How do I do this? I have this challenge, I have that challenge and that issue and political will and the pandemic and uncertainty and all the things that we are all dealing with. So that how is critical. And I think what we urgently need to be able to do is to give very, very concrete, simple solutions. Because yes, it is possible. It is also our job to open doors where none exist. And anyway, it is a change. There will be some degree of inertia. And to answer your question, progressive ideas have always been there in the Western world and in our own world. A lot of the ideas that are today in the NEP have anyway been there in our own Gurukul system.
Absolutely, agree.
Right? So the Guru never said that, you asked me a question and I'll give you an answer.
Right.
Maybe there'll be another question and then you keep. So there's a lot of critical inquiry already built into our system. What we really need to ensure is that we bring in that very, very strong focus on how different verticals within education talk to each other. So a lot for school education or K-12 depends on higher education, on university admissions and how things change there. If that happens, that talks to K-12. A really good thing is early childhood education being recognized finally and becoming part of our, that was long due.
Absolutely.
And thankfully it has happened. So that's very, very important and crucial. And for all of these, right from higher ed to this, to really be one whole is critical. So these kind of things need to be addressed and we need to find what's stopping, and a lot of public-private partnership or collaboration is the key where we can really make that implementation, which everybody said it's a beautiful vision, but implementation is the real challenge, given the diversity that we live in and given the sheer magnitude of our country. Recently, somebody was asking me a question in one of the sessions, and I'm bringing it here, that we in India, you're all talking about NEP and all the things that the NEP says, but we've all learned rote-based ways, and we are good at STEM. You know, we are proving it to the world that we are better at STEM. So, I mean, and somebody ended up addressing, you know what, probably it's not because of school education and all that rote-based learning, but we are probably good at STEM because one, we are more than 1/6 of the world, so some of us have got to be good. The other, because we believe in Jugaad. We learn it every day. We adjust every day. So we are naturally good at some sort of, but what's changing in our society very, very strongly is that children no longer are forced. It's no longer a necessity to do some Jugaad. Right. There is instant gratification happening rampantly instead. So then will we really be? So we really need to think it through how, and more importantly, mainstream social emotional learning rather than all the paraphernalia or the information, because that's really not the key. That's going to be a chip inside your head. Why bother?
Perfect.
What's important is learning how to learn, and for children to develop critical inquiry.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So as ma'am very correctly said, the how is going to be very important. You know, because all of us are very, very happy with the document, praising the document. But yes, there are certain gaps in how do we go about implementing things. But I'm sure India as a country has proven time and again. The pandemic was a perfect example of it. Overnight, it was announced that schools are going to be closed from tomorrow. Now, how do we conduct schools? But each and every one of us made it possible, right? So I think the answers will definitely come, for sure, you know, the positive side of it. So coming to Mr. Roshan Gandhi, a very interesting question for him, because he runs one of the biggest groups of schools in countries, 50,000 plus students. So how important is change implementation at scale? I understand implementing it for, 200 students, 500 students, 1,000 at the most, but how do you implement one change at a time simultaneously for 50,000 plus students? How challenging that can be given the size of our country?
So first I'll begin with an apology. I have a hard stop at 12:50 for my flight, so I'll just slip off the stage while you're carrying on.
Thank you.
A very interesting question. What I would say about the NEP is that it should have been called the NEV, the National Education Vision, because it sets out good practice in pedagogy, in curriculum, in professional development, in the management of schools and teachers. It sets out good practice, drawing upon international wisdom for what is the best practice. But it's not a policy. Whether the NEP existed or not, schools would still be able to implement all those good practices. And schools represented on panels like this and in audiences like this, all of us have the capacity to implement good practice at our own levels. So the NEP is sort of, it's a set of guidelines, it's a nice set of guidelines, but it's irrelevant to what we have to do as school leaders, as educators. Conversely, the majority of schools in the country are not represented in conferences like these. 50% of students study in government schools, and of the other 50%, 80% study in low-fee private schools. So the kind of quality of outcomes and things that we're looking for in those schools is of a very different nature. And policy which is needed at that level, which is really what's needed at the national level, should actually be at a much simpler level to try to get the basics in place. Because right now, children are sitting in schools for 8 years and emerging without being able to read and write because of lack of the very basic tenets of policy, like accountability of teachers in the government system. Right? On a given day, unfortunately, a lot of government school teachers are not turning up to work. So the NEP ideally should have addressed these structural fundamental issues to solve education at the core level. But yes, for schools like ours, and particularly as you were asking about large school chains, how to undergo a change management process for this, affecting real change inside classrooms at scale, inside thousands of classrooms in a system like ours, is a challenge. What we've done at our schools is really kind of worked with every single stakeholder in the system. It's been an extensive process. It's taken an entire year just to set the foundations in place before any change is there. We've worked with everyone to give them an opportunity to have their voice heard. Any change proposals are co-created with all of the principals, the middle leaders, and the teachers, so that their ideas are put into the picture, because any directive which comes from a policy or from a school management is not going to have the buy-in and the enthusiasm from people on the ground. You know, we've got wonderful, experienced teachers who've been teaching for decades in a particular way, and now we come in and start asking them to do things differently. And maybe they see the benefits of doing things differently, but, you know, it's understandably hard to expect them to try to change overnight. So we need to really work with them to generate their buy-in, and then we need to offer them all of the support that we can to enable them to change, right? So in particular, a professional development ecosystem is something that we've made a lot of efforts to create, where teachers have the sense of safety and the space and the time to experiment in their classrooms, to try new things, and then to share their good practice with others, and to be continuously supported with coaching, with mentoring, with professional development opportunities to continuously improve. And we will observe their classes in a non-punitive manner, not like an inspection where some observer is coming and, you know, with a clipboard in the back of the classroom, but rather they're going for the purpose of understanding where the teacher can be further supported and identifying more professional development opportunities for that teacher to enable them to keep growing and implementing these best practices which are talked about in the NEP and indeed elsewhere.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So yes, importance of professional development can't be stressed upon enough. Very, very important that we train our people, that we train our teachers and equip them to handle the next set of challenges. Thank you so much for that wonderful answer, Roshan. And I'm sure you have a flight to catch. Thank you for taking that time out for us. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Yeah. So he spoke about a very important aspect, change management. So Rikrit, I would love to come to you. How important is change management? Because I noticed two types of things when the pandemic hit and the school started. One, certain schools were very progressive. They were ready for the change because they had implemented technology 5 years back, 10 years back. So for them, the transition was smooth, very seamless. In a day, they were online. Second type of school that we saw really struggled. They didn't know what tool to use, which software to go to. Do I go to Teams? Do I go to Zoom? Do I go to Google? What do I do? It took them at least a week or a couple of weeks to set their system, train their teachers. So by the time everything was streamlined, at least a month was gone. So change management was not in place. So what is your advice to schools going forward? Because this is going to be a regular practice going forward. I'm sure schools are going to be fair game, you know. Pollution ho gaya, school ban kar do. New variant is coming, school ban kar do. Something is happening, school ban kar do. So schools are going to be fair game going forward. So how do you recommend change management? How do we as education leaders be ready for the next set of challenges? More importantly, we are ready. How do we get our teams ready? How do we implement change management practices in our schools?
So, if you rewind around 2 years, if this would have happened to us then, then all of us weren't even ready, even like 1% at that point of time as well. I think the major difficulty that most of the schools faced was that, of course, as you said, that they weren't ready to, of course, change. And then when we suddenly had to shift to online schools from offline schools, within the span of 1 or 2 days, and then we were all stuck. But I think it depends on the mindset. There were lots of schools that particularly had the processes in place, but it's not only about the process, it's particularly about the mindset. In our schools, what we did was that first we began our schools on, we began the virtual classes on Skype for a day, and there was utter chaos. It was crazy, it was bonkers for 1 or 2 days, and then we of course shifted to MS Teams after a point. It took our team some time to understand how to function on MS Team as well. There were educators in our schools. We have schools in 4 states in upper North India. So there were educators in our schools who weren't even comfortable using WhatsApp. And suddenly they became, experts on MS Teams within a span of just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days. So it depends on your mindset. If you want to change, of course, and then you will change. But then no one can force you to change. Right. So change is the need of the hour, and everything has to, of course, change. But I think that what we've learned over the last 1 to 2 years is that it's important to have a change management process in place. Things will eventually change, as you said. Like schools can close any second now, given that the third strain is out in the world. But it's all about a mindset, and it's all about the processes that you have in place, and it of course trickles down from the top. If the managements of schools, if they are receptive to change and if they support change, of course, change happens. There are various archaic processes in schools that need to, of course, change. I mean, the way that we teach our kids. Now, suddenly, when we've shifted back to the offline days, around half of our kids are coming to school these days now. But when we've shifted back to the offline days, and then we've seen that the same processes are coming back in place again. So in order to make sure that change remains, I think that we've got to educate our educators a bit more. We've got to have various workshops. So what we do is that we've left it up to peer assessment in this case. So the middle level management, what they do is that they take a faculty test every week. We've got innovation tests where we particularly talk about future tech, and then we take a test of the team once a week as well. So what we're trying to do in our schools is that we're trying to educate our educators by making them want to learn more, by making it compulsory, of course, but making them want to learn by themselves as well. And then there are various there are the hampers that we give out as well, and then there are various things that we do for them. Nice. But we've got to make it a part of the way that we teach our kids. If educators are constantly willing to learn themselves, that's how they will teach better, and that's how kids will want to learn from them as well. Really? So it's important to have a process for this. So these are just some of the steps that we take in our schools.
So I think I can draw a parlance with the corporate structure here as well. They have these mandatory training workshops. If you do this, then you get your appraisal. That kind of a thing, that you have to put in X number of hours for training every year. So I think that is one good practice that can be implemented for teachers as well, that every year we're going to bring in professionals, X number of hours of training has to be done, you will be certified, and then you move to the next level. Right? So it's very important that we start working with professionals in the industry now to make sure that the good practices are implemented in our schools as well. Anuj sir, I would love to put you in a spot now. Right? While the document is fantastic, huge, visionary, all the good adjectives, but India is a very, very socio-economically diverse country. Right? Today also schools are facing challenges, fees are not coming in, parents have lost their jobs, some of them have lost their family members. So where does the vision end and where does practicality begin? That is one. Second, I would like to club it with another question for you. I know it's a problem of plenty. NEP talks about 100 things. Which are the two important things which even a poorest school can implement from day one? What would your recommendation be, sir? I'm sorry to put you in a spot for the fees factor.
You rightly said, Brajesh, India is a land of diversity. We have schools running from 4 rooms to a school in 40 acres. We have schools being run by charitable societies to the schools run by the corporates. We are schools being run by all kinds of purposes. It can be pure commercial purpose, or it can be some religious purpose. So there's so much of diversity in our K-12 system, which is the largest in the world, by the way. So if I talk about the private K-12 education in the world, so globally I think there are almost 10% kids going to private K-12 schools all over the world, but we add the numbers back home here in India, it goes to almost 17-18%. So yes, it's not easy to implement anything with this kind of a diverse background, but I think the government is cognizant of this fact, right, and they are working at the grassroots level. They have a whole lot of programs from Anganwadis. Earlier there was Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, then we have RTE. Yes. So where the government, I remember once I was talking to Kapil Sibal. I think, one question I said that, first time, child has not gone to a school, and you are saying that, child will be given admission in a class at an age-appropriate level. So I think somehow it's going to affect the quality of education in schools. So said that, we are concerned about quantity, quality can wait. So RTE became a ripe act, right intention, poor execution. Right. So NEP is nothing new. Lot of schools, lot of conscious schools have already been, doing a lot of things which are part of the provisions of NEP. So, so I just hope that, we are able to, all of us, rise to the occasion. And from the government, as I was talking about, everything in India needs a political will. fine. And the social acceptance, and yes, the budgetary allocation, of course. So I just hope that, as I was talking earlier also, we are going to be the biggest youth force in the world in the next decade. So we as a country, we as an educationist, as edu leaders, we need to think and realize that we need to cater to that kind of, volumes. Given the fact that, nowadays, what I personally feel, it's not about marks, it's about making a mark. It's about jobs. So what I realized all these years, whatever education process, still a lot of schools have been focused on rote learning, exam-centric learning, mark-centric. Even parents are fascinated, okay, how much marks my child is getting. So for the last few years, we've been trying to change that approach, that mindset, that perspective, that it's not just about marks. It is not just about a degree, a certification. It's about how skilled the child is. And I was talking about the being a biggest youth force in the world. So we need to bridge the gap between the kind of education and skills being provided in our school, colleges, and universities to the needs of the industry. We need to bridge this academia industry, gap. We need to ensure that, the children are getting jobs the moment they graduate out of the colleges and universities. So there's a lot, still, despite of, I think over the last few years, the enrollment has increased. Like if I talk about Punjab and Haryana, if you see the numbers, so the government has also done wonders. But now, a lot depends on all of us, since in India, we almost 40% children going to the private schools, colleges, and universities, that we need to ensure that we need to change our mindset. We need to have a top-down approach. For NEP, every school has to have kind of a task force, has to understand, sitting with all the middle-level management, teachers, coordinators, that, discuss with them in an informal environment, what are the provisions of NEP, what needs to be done. You're talking about the performance-based incentive, or, like what has happened for the doctors in both medical and dental, that, for attending every workshop or every professional development or a capacity building program, there are certain points, and for every doctor, there is, imperative to accumulate those set of points, during a particular year. So there's a lot what can be done, and there are challenges, though the challenges will remain, like in recent pandemic times, the digital divide, the issue of the connectivity, the issue of devices, the equipment, the affordability, a lot of such challenges have come to fore. So, but it requires a will, it requires undeterred determination, and where there is a will, there is a way. If today the government can increase the budgetary allocation, there can be less of bureaucratic wrangles, there can be a very clear perspective, and we ensure the transition from a child from school to college to university, and eventually in a job or in a business is a seamless one. If we are able to create that kind of a ecosystem, I think it's not difficult.
Brilliant. So employability is a key word here, is what I take from Sir's passage that what Sir shared with us. Very, very important to make children employable, because that is actually happening. I've worked in corporates, I've seen people coming with fancy degrees, but the moment you give them some task, they fail miserably. So there's a huge gap between what they've learned and what they have to actually implement on the ground. So I think that's a very key factor that you brought.
I think even most of the MNCs and most of the companies back home in India, they are not looking at your degree or your marks. Absolutely. They are looking at your skills. For example, if I have to recruit some people in my system, if I interview or interact with 100 people, I hardly, is able to select 4 or 5 which I feel are recruitable, which I feel are skilled. They are fulfilling the needs for which I'm, recruiting them.
Perfect.
So we all have to understand, let there be no rat race. Let's not just, keep providing this education blindly without any purpose, understanding the need and the objective. And NEP just a reference document, as I said. So we all have to absorb the provisions of NEP, realign our system, restructure our delivery of education in our schools, and sky's the limit.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. So yes, there's hope for all of us. As you can see, that majority tech companies in the world today are headed by Indians, right? So there's one good thing that's coming about. So on that topic, ma'am, when we talk about tech is going to be a very important part of things going forward. So how important are courses like coding, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things going to be important going forward, considering that even CBSE is making to look subjects like coding mandatory? How important is the inclusion of these subjects in the curriculum now to make the children of future generations tech savvy?
Absolutely important, because you can't do, it's become hygiene now. You cannot, there's no choice. You have to learn. The way you learn English, the way you learn math, you have to learn technology. And here the edge is that the children are very prone to it. Again, if you look at it from the children's perspective, they are fastest at learning this, and our adults would be slowest at delivering it. So we have to also change mindsets over there. And we had recently done a survey, because education is for children, and we want to change the baton from the teacher to the child, where we feel the children need to learn and they need to feel that the schools are for them. It's not that the teachers have to teach, because they take a huge burden on their head that we have to deliver, and then everything is seen from that perspective. So children, when we had done a survey with children are very aware. In fact, you'll be surprised that the recommendations, they haven't studied NEP. They would have just heard about it or listened from their teachers. But they had all the relevant recommendations for their school, for their teachers, for their peers. They are ready to take the challenge. They are ready to do projects. They are ready to do, get into a coding class or a coding competition without being aware about it. So which was amazing, where the schools would, take a back seat that we haven't introduced it. We haven't introduced an artificial intelligence.
Right.
But children have the confidence that we'll be able to do it. So I think we have to use this policy as a catalyst, and to validate what we feel is right, and to change mindsets, because that's when Sir said that we need to do multiple sessions with the teachers to understand what it is, because a lot of them have not even understood, they've not even read about it, because there's so much in the school to do.
Agreed.
So it is
yes, so
an
I think
important
that's
integral
where
part.
ma'am was speaking about public-private partnerships, So similarly,
Yes.
with schools and private partnerships, I'm sure this hurdle can be jumped upon.
Absolutely, because you can't do everything yourself.
Perfect.
You have to leverage what is best, and collaboration is one of the goals.
Perfect.
You see, ma'am, she was talking, children, I call them, they are digital natives. We are
Yes.
digital immigrants.
Absolutely.
An ethos of what all we are trying to do.
And believe me, sir, I've heard stories of that. We've got children, 5-year children running their YouTube channels. There is a group of children in one of the schools. There was an online assessment going on. They created a server on Discord. The question paper was shared. The answers were shared. The teacher thought it was a very fair examination. How many of you all know about Discord, by the way? In the audience? 1, 2, 3. So yeah, lot to unlearn and then relearn. Very critical. Yeah. So ma'am, coming to you, last question for the day. You spoke about the ECA bit, which is very interesting. How important is the FLN, the Foundation Literacy Numeracy? Because I've seen children coming to grade 5, 6, 7, 8, not knowing basic addition, splitting the middle term. So many things in mathematics, science especially missing. These children are going to grow up. Employability is going to be a challenge. Socially, these are the ones who are going to go ahead and vote tomorrow after a few years, not knowing things about it. So how important is the creation of foundation going forward for these children?
I think in the entire gamut of education, the most important years are the early years, right? And foundational literacy and numeracy, which in so many schools we keep saying, and I think Roshan mentioned that till grade 8 also, when children are not able to read and write. So we all have James Hackman's research, and it shows to prove that it doesn't just impact academic prowess or knowing, it also impacts the economics of the entire country. So, yes, there cannot be any less importance given to it, but at every stage, including early years, what's critical and what's at the heart of making all stakeholders talk to each other is giving that thing in the hands of the child. Student agency, student voice and choice is at the heart of it. even early years children are very capable of taking a lot of decisions. And that is where we all are. And the more we allow children to decide and take an active role, not just in their own learning, of course that is critical, but also in the managing of the setup around. I mean, we tried letting little children decide how to create literacy corners and numeracy corners and whichever other learning centers they wanted to.
Brilliant.
They did a great job. We allowed middle school children to decide to create a good tech ecosystem for hybrid learning for teachers. Children, the school student council and some other children, we created internship programs around it, and the school's social media to the school's entire management of the tech end is done by children.
Brilliant.
I mean, and they feel empowered. They go ask teachers, they go train teachers, okay, you need this, I'm here. I can do this for you.
Fantastic.
I can make this happen. And that is, I think, also leading towards so-called employability. I mean, these are the real-time skills,
Perfect.
and school is an organization which has opportunity for so much. So you have to give it, you have to just empower and see. At every age group it works.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So the foundation. Yeah, sure. Ricky would like to add something.
So, like since we've had a word about tech as well, so, if I recall around 4 or 5 years ago, it's an anecdote that I shared on this stage in WS only, which of course went viral around that time. So, like since it's relevant, I think I'll just share it once more. So, there was a young teacher who we hired in a head office branch around, I think around 6-7 years ago. And like being young, of course, plus you're into Snapchat and WhatsApp and so on and so forth around that time. So this is pre-COVID times.
Right.
Many years prior to that, actually. So, like around 5-6 years or 7-8 years ago even. So she came up to me one day and she said, "Sir, there's a parent who's asking for the report card on WhatsApp." I said at that time, of course, that no, we cannot send the report cards on WhatsApp. No. Like if you share it, and then, this will happen. And plus she said, "Sir, can we pass it on to them on mail?" I said, "Absolutely not. If you aren't allowed to pass it on WhatsApp, and then of course, you can't pass it out on mail as well." She said, "So WhatsApp, I think we can pass it on because they also chat with us on WhatsApp. And these are, WhatsApp was just launched over here in India around that time."
Right.
I said, "No mail, no WhatsApp in that case, no Instagram, nothing." She said, "Sir, can I pass it out on Snapchat then?" So this just goes to show, I think, that we're living in a world where IIT tech is a part of us now.
Absolutely.
So of course, if you couldn't pass on the report card on WhatsApp, and then you couldn't pass it on Snapchat, and then you had to, of course, give the offline version of it. But things have drastically changed. I think that we've learned that like if you look at tech, it isn't a roadblock. I think it's something that really helps us grow, and it also helps us function better. So I think this is what we've learned over the last 1 or 2 years. And since you all spoke about tech, I just thought that I'll share this point as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I think that was a wonderful, wonderful opinion shared by each and every one on the stage here. So I think all of them deserve a huge round of applause. Yeah, let's not be miserly. Come on. Yeah, perfect. So two points that I'd like to conclude. One, yes, tech is here to stay. It's important that we groom our teachers, we train our teachers, and make sure that they're ready for the next set of challenges. For the next decade, all of us have a roadmap with us. Not all at once, but at least 1 year at a time. I'm sure the journey will be very interesting. Two, I must like to thank the whole fraternity, last 18 to 20 months, the kind of sharing that has taken place on online platforms, the collaborative practices shared by schools, that this is what I'm doing, and other schools going ahead and emulating those things, has been a brilliant, brilliant example of collaboration. And I think 21st century is the century of collaboration, not competition, right? So I think the whole fraternity once again deserves a huge round of applause. The kind of work that we have put in last 18 to 20 months is just amazing, right? So we have a minute more. We would like to pick up a couple of questions from the audience. Anybody would like to ask any question to the stalwarts sitting here? So I think this is a typical Indian classroom. We are waiting for one person to, oh, we have one. I'm sure then there'll be a flurry later on. So I'd like to come there, ma'am.
improvising on the question that you asked, the two things that the poorest of the poor schools can implement from the new education policy.
Sure.
Well, one sir did indirectly hit upon, that was employment or skill development. What is the second one that the poorest of the poor schools can implement? See, I come from, I have a very nice background, of course, working with DPS and being the founder headmistress of DPS Dehradun. But all of a sudden, it just, I had been to City Montessori School, Lucknow, where it hit upon me that these are privileged children. And most of the children actually are catering to the villages. So I thought I should give up these A and this aristocratic, principalship and go to those B and C cities, where, believe me, they don't even have a smart board, or they don't even have that access to internet. So that is the poorest of the poor schools. And believe me, the pandemic has hit those schools. It has, like my school, Bhasin's International School, it waived off 6 months tuition fee. In fact, the only school in UP that waived off 6 months tuition fee. But now we are pulling in ends, to face the challenges of financial crunch.
Sure.
Okay, so the poorest of the poor schools can implement from
Anirudh sir,
the new
would you like to
education
take that, please?
policy.
Yeah, so as I said, yes, there are a lot of challenges, and challenges will always remain there. So we run a lot of schools in the border area, and a few of our schools are just within striking distance of 5 kilometers from Pakistan border. And we did face this challenge where there was a problem of internet connectivity and a lot of other issues in the rural hinterland. So what we did, as I said, where there's a will, there's a way. So we converted all our buses which were not being used into mobile classrooms. And we got those smart LEDs fitted into those buses.
Brilliant.
And there was a separate department set up with every one teacher aligned to one bus. And there was a separate academic planner for those students who had no internet accessibility. So there are ways and means, and I'd like to tell one thing, technology isn't costly. Fine. So it's the way you implement the right kind of technology for the right kind of need. As we say that, there's a whole lot of information. The kids are bombarded with the information. There's every information available at the click of the mouse. But, which information is relevant and which is not relevant, which technology you can use, which technology kids misuse. So I think there lies the role of a leadership, the critical thinking, the problem-solving skill thinking, the collaborative, approach. So I think with a vision, with a, critical approach, with a creative approach, a lot of these problems can be sorted out.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Last question for the day from the gentleman there. Sir, if you could share your name, school, and then the question. Name, school, or the organization, whatever.
Yeah, my name is Imran Rashid. I represent Aptens here. So I have a basic question. As an educator, we have been focusing a lot on the education, academics, but are we thinking about the mental health of the students? Because, if we talk about the topics like low concentration, we are not able to concentrate over there, and then low memory skills, बच्चे ध्यान नहीं दे रहे हैं, hyperactivity. It's not about the education, it's about the health, right?
Right.
So what are we doing as a school leaders?
So who would like to take that? Anyone? Ms. Vora, please.
Yeah. Anyone, everyone?
It's not just about health, it's about well-being, I'll say. And I think this is a very, very relevant point.
So, like Sir said, it's about well-being. And you're very right. Education can take a backseat. Honestly, social emotional well-being and social emotional learning needs to be mainstreamed. It needs to be not just part of schools. Life skills, for a long time, we have all been talking about. But they don't just need to be one lesson somewhere. It needs to be the mainstream, the thing that we do, because mental health is a real, real challenge. There is a lot of research ongoing in this. And in anything and everything we do, if we manage to integrate SEL, that can make it and schools are doing it. And I can talk about many, many schools doing it. Another thing, just adding to the previous question, so wonderful example by Sir. I was also working with a lot of budget private schools in very far-end areas. And from a foundational literacy numeracy perspective, believe me, a lot is possible everywhere. You could all try on your phone, there is this app, I don't know who created it, but it's a wonderful app. It's called phonicsbyphone.org. But I do know that in all these 3-tier cities, semi-urban areas and villages where endless teachers train themselves on phonics and have ensured amazing literacy for little ones. It's a beautiful app with 15-minute capsule lessons for teachers. And it's amazing. It gives them every little tool that they would need for literacy. So there are ways. It's just where there's a will, there's a way.
Perfect. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you so much. You all have been wonderful.
One second. Social emotional well-being has to be the culture. It is nothing that you have to talk about or think about. It has to be there. Otherwise, if it's not there, the child is not there with you. And emotionally, he will not be there with you mentally. Learning only happens when the child's happy, safe. So this is like your Maslow's
And I'm sure
hierarchy.
it's naturally ingrained in teachers as well.
Just add one small thing. One, that, social emotional well-being of students is also important. Teachers is also important. I'll just like to share one anecdote. Like what we asked the children in the class, that, okay, beta, what do you want to become? Every child was talking, I want to become scientist or pilot or whatever. One child, stood up and said, ma'am, I want to become happy. So teacher said, no, I'm asking, what do you want to become? He said, no, ma'am, I want to become happy. She said, perhaps you don't understand the purpose of education. And the child said, ma'am, perhaps you don't understand the purpose of life. So we need to understand that happiness quotient, like we have Dubai, the Ministry for Happiness, and we are 144th in the happiness index in the world. So that's very important and relevant.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All of you have been a wonderful audience, and I think the panel deserves another round of applause for their brilliant answers. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Team Elitz, once again, and we are sorry for the slight delay.
No, that's perfectly fine. In fact, thank you so much, because this session was really, really important for all of us. And I would now request our senior colleague and senior manager, Mr. Sunil Kumar, to come on the dais and present a memento, a token of gratitude to all our speakers here. Mr. Sunil Kumar. And yes, we can have another round of applause, everyone. So can we have the mementos from Mr. Brijesh Karya for his wonderful moderating? COO, Singhania Education Group. He's been an amazing moderator, no doubt. Dr. Amrita Vora, Director Education, GEMS India and Executive Principal, GEMS International School. Mr. Anirudh Gupta, CEO, DCM Group of Schools. Mr. E. Kirat Serai, Managing Director, Satluj Group of Schools. Ms. Geetika Bahuguna, Chief Operating Officer, Services, Millennium Schools. Roshan Gandhi had to leave because he had a flight to catch, but we'll ensure that his memento is sent to him. And we would like all our speakers to come together for a group photograph, please.